Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. Today's video is going to be on mold toxicity. When is it a priority to address? We'll kind of break that down. I'll kind of give you my clinical outlook on that, and then we'll talk about kind of next steps to dive in and address some of these issues. Before we do, please smash that like button. Really helps the search algorithm. Put your comments down below. Let me know your experience with mold and mold toxicity issues as well and what you've done. All right, so let's dive in. So do we have a primary issue with mold toxicity? The problem with dealing with mold at all is that the overlap symptoms of mold could be anything, right? Like mold is one of those rabbit holes in functional medicine where it could be anything because you could be fatigued, you could be brain fog, you could have digestive issues, sleep issues. Almost all of those symptoms are under the mold umbrella. So any doctor could say, oh, well, I think your issue is mold, right? And so for me, I just look at the whole clinical presentation, right? So what makes me think mold is a priority and how what we actually do from an action item is totally different. So the first thing I look at is, are we actually living in a mold rich environment? Do you have an active leak that's been unaddressed? Is there some kind of water damage that where mold kind of grew and needs to be kind of remediated? Is there anything visible, right? Is there actual visible mold? Do you have that history where you go into your home and you get foggy and you feel like junk? You leave your home for a day, you feel so much better. You go back, you feel worse. Is it like flipping that light switch on and off where you're in, you feel like junk, you're out, you feel so much better? That tells me a lot. And then the question from there is, well, what's the cause? Is it something simple like you just have a high level of humidity in the home and you need to really work on keeping the humidity down? Do you have a basement that needs to be waterproofed and moisture barrier? Do you have any water damage from before, from the past, that needs to be remediated and you need to do some fogging? So it just depends upon what the current environment is like and is the issue still active or not. Because ideally, the first thing you have to do to get mold toxicity under control is stop living in that moldy environment. That's the first thing. Two, address it, quantify it, figure out how moldy it is. So I'll recommend doing the plate testing. I'll put links down below in the reference section. We'll do plates and we'll see how moldy it is. So we'll be able to get a scale, an objective number on there based on the plates and based off of it growing on a plate. And so 5 or above tends to be a problem. Again, molds that are going to have mycotoxins coming off it are going to be more of an issue. So these are going to be your aspergillus. These are going to be your penicillium species. These are going to be the ones that spit off your stachybotrys, your black mold. These are going to be the ones that spit off your high level of mycotoxins. So if we have high levels in the environment, that's important to look at. And then we may want to look at it on a timeline. I like to look at all health issues on a timeline. If we can go back and look at water damage in the home or moving into the home, and does that kind of correlate with someone's symptoms? That's always a nice thing. I always like to lay it out in a timeline because usually you can see new inputs coming into the environment, i.e. mold in the house or some kind of a stressor. It can line up with symptoms sometimes. So I like to look at the current environment because sometimes you don't really have to go in and push too much detoxification out of the gate. You just kind of come in there and fix the household, get that cleaned up. That makes a big difference. Now, obviously, getting inflammation down makes a huge difference. So if someone's diet's junky, their digestion's crap, all those things are going to move the needle because breaking down protein, you're going to be able to get the amino acids to make the glutathione, to run your detoxification pathways. That's going to move the needle significantly. So you got to look at the complete picture. So when people say, oh, we got to work on detoxification, it's like, well, it just depends kind of where you're starting from. If your diet isn't great or there's too many inflammatory foods in your diet, if your hormones are stressed out, if you're not sleeping good, you're not drinking enough water, if you're not breaking down your food, if you have gut bugs, you don't really have to go much further than really working on the foundations. Now, once all the foundations are done, you're digesting your food well, you're pooping regularly, your adrenals and your stress handling systems are much better, they're much more stable, then that tells me we're on the right track. I know your gut infections are cleared out. Remember, 80% of your immune system's in the gut. So if your guts are stressed, if your gut's stressed, your immune system will be stressed. If your immune system is stressed, you will be more sensitive to the molds in your environment. Why are some people sensitive to molds, some not, right? Obviously, there's a genetic component, but the more hypersensitive your immune system is, there's a connection with gut permeability, gut stress, and immune system stress. So it's very important to get your gut fixed, your diet fixed, your hormones fixed. And then from there, if you've had chronic gut issues, there may also be a lot of nutrient deficiencies. And so it's good to look at the nutrient deficiencies as well. And so we will do the plate testing. We'll look at the home. We'll quantify that. We'll work on all the foundations. We'll go through those 6 R's. remove the bad foods, replace the enzymes and acids, repair the gut lining and hormones, remove the bugs and infections, repopulate, reinoculate good pro and prebiotics, and then retest. So these are all good foundational things. When it comes to mold, if it's more chronic, we can also do specific testing that looks at colonization of mold in the gut. So we can look at Aspergillus species, for instance, on certain organic acid testing. We can get a window. Is that a chronic issue? So that's very helpful. We can do organic acid testing. We can also do urinary mold testing as well. Now, again, I don't love to do that out of the gate unless if the home is still really moldy, because of course you're probably going to have a bunch of urinary mold if your home's moldy. So it doesn't really tell us too much out of the gate. I like to get the environment really clean. Once I know the environment's pretty clean, then the urinary mold testing is helpful because, okay, if we're still spitting off a whole bunch of urinary molds in our urine and the environment's clean, then there's probably a toxic burden that we're trying to kind of knock down, right? So that's important to keep in mind. So I like to really focus on the environment first and then looking at individual urinary mold toxicity second. Also, some people have a harder time detoxifying mold. And so whether it's low glutathione, so just doing a urinary mold test, some people will say that, really loading up with glutathione and N-acetylcysteine are good phase 2 detoxifying nutrients can give us a better window of what's happening underneath the hood. And so looking at urinary molds, but being on glutathione for a couple of days or a week or so before with some NAC can be very helpful just to make sure you can push those molds out. So very, very helpful to be able to look at and dive deeper in on the mold side, because if you have mold issues, you may not be able to detoxify. And so it's super, super important to make sure detoxification is good. Just making sure my stream's going here. Checking myself here. Okay, good. My stream's going. All right, cool. So it's good to look at urinary mold, but may not be the priority. Again, looking at the home is better out of the gates. We can look at specific organic acid tests that look at colonized mold. We can work on all the other foundational things. Even if you have mold issues, you have to be able to digest and break down your food adequately to run those detoxification pathways. So really, really important on that front. I'm going to put some links to some tests that I specifically run and tests that I look at for mold tests in the home. Really important. And again, if you want to dive in deeper, I'll put my link down below. You can reach out. That's helpful. You want to schedule a consult, work with patients worldwide. That's a good next step for you if you're serious about getting to the root cause. Also, you got to figure out how to get to the root cause of the mold, right? So if you have mold in your home, most molds are going to be caused in two specific areas. Like number one, there's a water leak. It was unaddressed, and you have to clean out that mold, and you have to make sure the leak's fixed. If the leak was fixed, but the water wasn't dried properly, then you can have mold. So you may have to remediate that, whether it's you're topically hitting the mold with some kind of a hydrogen peroxide solution, whether you're using a Decon 30 or a fogging solution afterwards. Those are all helpful. Make sure the root cause of how that water got into your home is fixed. Second thing is you could just have a high level of moisture. The high level of moisture could be you need a moisture barrier in your basement. You have an open basement that's unfinished, put a moisture barrier up, get a dehumidifier in there. That will keep the humidity down. Those are all good ways to prevent mold from forming. Mold can typically form acutely with water coming in, or it can kind of occur chronically with just high levels of moisture, and that rich moisture environment can cause mold to form. This is the reason why if you go to a basement that's not addressed properly, basements always kind of have that like dank kind of smell. That's due to the high level of moisture and just being underground, being with that concrete's very porous, so you can pull a lot of moisture from the environment inside. So you want some kind of a moisture barrier up, some kind of a paint on moisture barrier on the actual cement, and or dehumidifier is very, very helpful to keep the humidity down. So really good out of the gates. And then outside of that, you can use fogging solution. I'll put one of the foggers that I like. I like the Haven BioBalance spray. Nice essential oil. It's a little pricey, but it works good. Problem with dealing with a lot of conventional mold killers is that you can have secondary metabolites that can create immune stress on people. And so the essential oils tend to do a very good job. The fogging solution is great because you can like get behind a drywall. You can get, in really tight areas. You can also put a little hose behind it and you can funnel it in certain spots, which is great in case you suspect there's some mold in an area. So that's really helpful to kind of get those mold spores down. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please put a thumbs up here on the chat, put your comments down below, and reach out if you want to dive in deeper to get more to the root cause and what's happening. All right, Dr. J here. Take care. Bye.